I talked a lot last time about why people might domesticate plants and what evidence we have for cacao and domestication. We have that wild progenitor or wild version, Theobroma bicolor. Bicolor. I think of it in Spanish. Bicolor. What's your name? Sorry.
Shelby.
Shelby?
Mark.
Okay. Thank you. Great. And reasons why people domesticate, and it's a little unclear how cacao might fit into that whole scenario of increasing carrying capacity, being this, because it's not a main subsistence food. Yet it's really clear that people tinkered with it and domesticated it at a certain point in time. And the genetics can indicate, to a certain degree, the chronology, and the linguistics about the word cacao itself also gives us a clue that it's quite old. But now today we're going to get into some a lot of archaeology, a lot of direct and indirect evidence of where cacao was and how it might have been used. And the way, again, thinking about how we define archaeology, it's the material culture. It's like the stuff that we use, and the evidence comes from that. This illustration is in the chapter that was assigned for today. And it's supposed to, some people think that it depicts well, first of all, definitely, this thing right here is kind of hard to see. I was trying to find a better image of this, and I couldn't find a good image of a photograph of the pot itself. And so it's still the same drawing that you have in your reading. This is the face of a howler monkey here, or spider monkey here. And then people have suggested that these are the pods, the cacao pods. And remember all those pictures I showed and all of the shapes and sizes and different colors and that sort of thing. What's the issue with this? Why is it kind of questionable about, because, shape-wise, okay, that might work. What do you remember about where those cacao pods are?
It's not like right off the trunk.
Yeah, it's on the end of the branch. Not really cacao. But you can wonder, well, maybe it's artistic license, sort of like the Europeans used artistic license, and they wanted this thing hanging off in 4 pods, and probably these are representing directions as well, or at least, kind of orienting things. I don't know. I'm a little iffy because there's some other Amazonian. So if you have primates, you've got to have a forested environment, which means that it's likely these are tropical, some kind of tropical plant for sure, that's being associated with that. And then you can look also at the vessel shape itself. What does that look like to you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, tall neck bottle. What sort of things do we consume out of vessels shaped like that?
Alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol. Very. That's great. I think of sodas too. Fizzy, bubbly sorts of drinks maybe, and that tells them, but definitely alcohol. I think that's a great thing to keep in mind. Because remember last time too, I talked about that whole drunk monkey hypothesis, and we're sort of alcohol seeking species in some ways, perhaps. And and here's the thing. If the Amazonian basin, northern South America, is the place of the first domesticates of cacao, what were they using it for? What do we have evidence of? And there's not, and you can look at the practices of native people living today from that region, and what do they do with cacao? Some of that definitely is a product, I mean, they're part of the contemporary world, so there's going to be lots of influences and changes that have happened, so you can't think of that as like a fossil practice that's carried through perfectly today. But what do people in Venezuela, Ecuador, that sort of region do with cacao? There's not a lot with the seeds. It's this fruit that they consume, the fresh fruit, and they ferment the fruit, and it makes a very nice, one term you might see is this chicha. And that's a word that's used in South America to talk about fermented drinks. And you can think of it as kind of like a beer, sort of a not super strong alcoholic, not a distilled alcohol, but this sort of lighter alcoholic drink. It's like malt liquor or something, you know. It's like a wine spritzer. I don't know. It's sort of a wine or a beer or something like that with the fermented fruit. So there is that. And if you look through that really detailed list of all the ethnographic uses of cacao in Mexico and Central America that's in the chapter that was for last class, there's lots of sort of consuming of the fruit, fermenting the fruit, having an alcohol out of that, this sort of including cacao in other alcoholic preparations, plus lots of other things. So it's almost like that Amazonian practices and then on steroids, because it's, you know, really like every possible use of cacao in some way. So the thing about this is an ancient vessel. This comes from what's called archaeologically the Chavin culture. It occurs in Peru and Bolivia, but mostly Peru, and is thousands. Dates they have. I don't give the dates on here. What's the most recent? Like at least 5,000 years old. Old. So old evidence that could be some kind of reference to cacao, but maybe as an alcoholic preparation. To my knowledge, there haven't been really ancient vessels that they found the theobromine in, but again, there has been some recent work that's discovered some traces that are a little bit more recent than this one. But just not an abundance of it. And I'm going to show you lots and lots of evidence from Mexico and Central America. So, and when you think about it too, to get to what we eventually call chocolate, there's lots and lots of steps of preparing and fermenting, drying, doing all this stuff with the seeds to get it to a state that it can be used. And that's not necessarily the first way that people might have thought about using it. So it's one of those sorts of things that you discover along the way. You're interested in it for that nice, delicious fruit, and it makes a nice wine. And then, gee, that helps extract the seeds. And can we use those seeds for something? Well, yeah, there are these different toasted seed sorts of foods and preparations that we can consume with it. And then, wow, gee, then, you know, it kind of can build on on one practice on another. So what's some of the oldest evidence in Mexico and Central America? Wow, doesn't that look familiar? So this, both of these vessels have been tested positive for the compound theobromine. Yeah, the dates on this, 1150 to 900 BC, and then this one, 900 to 700 BC. So, and this is the great thing, like the development, the advances in knowledge since I was in grad school. We knew, hey, there's this really interesting, very early culture in Honduras. They have these bottles. Isn't that cool? What do they use a bottle for? I don't know. But they're just really cool, funky looking things. That a lot of these come from cave sites in Honduras. So really well preserved. Perfect for archaeology to go back and do that chemical testing to look and see what they might have been used for. And so, again, we have this bottle, and then what does this look like to you? Does it look like? Someone's saying something. What does it look like? A pod. Yeah, pod, but not, not really a cacao pod, right? The fancy name that archaeologists use for this is phytoform, which just means squash-shaped. So I'll put that down too. Squash shape, and that's true of this one too, right? So they're really like, in fact, now that I think about it, most of these cacao-related vessels tend to have that sort of ridging and everything on it, but it doesn't look exactly like a cacao pod either. What's the biggest difference here between this one? This one's a little, this is older, so very much looking rather like those South American examples. What's different? What's going on here? What does that look like to you? If I didn't, hadn't told you.
Like a teapot, so it's called something like hot.
Exactly. Something hot, and that you pour it, right? So here's the amazing thing. This form that's thousands of years old from Central America is something that ends up getting copied, used all the way through the history of cacao as we know it. Europeans copy this form. Not exactly, they do their own interpretation of it. But the big thing is having that upright spout, very steep spout. So it gives you a clue. This is all about, right? This is something else. And so the archaeologist, Rosemary Joyce, who's at Berkeley, John Henderson, wrote this article saying, well, maybe part of, maybe at first it's all about social sharing by having drinks together, basically. And maybe this is showing us that there's a change that's happened, and that when do you, like today, it's okay to think in these terms, what are some of the logistics of having tea? Yeah, a lot of times you have it with friends, especially like you go to England. That's part of it. It's a time to get together, right? What else does it?
Ceremonial.
Yeah, it's more ceremonial, or a different kind of ceremonial, where you have someone who, like that used to be in Victorian times. Who poured the tea, and even before that, who pours, who serves. So it means that there's some kind of serving going on too. And then the other thing I like to think about with this is when you're pouring, it's sort of a little bit, there's a little drama involved. Sometimes it can be a lot of drama. You know, are you good at it? You know, it's an anxiety my kids have. Is like, oh, am I going to hit the cup? So we can get that just out of looking at these changes in the vessel forms. You know, something different's going on. Very interesting. Here's another example. Slightly, you know, newer, you know, a little bit more recent, maybe 100 years. This one's from Belize. Looks kind of crazy on the surface of it, but it has those same ridges. And again, this one tested positive for theobromine. And then, man, look at that spout, right? And then this open, that's the other thing. This is open on top. That other one was too. Let me go back to that. See? Open up here. What does this imply? Yeah. Pour something in it. Get into it much more easily than this. You're pouring something into it, but it's like you don't really want it to spill and you don't want other stuff to get in it, right? You can even stomp it up fairly easily. So it implies a different other activities are going on. This one really nicely, you know, they cleverly put a handle on it. The other ones you had to support with your hand. Okay, now we'll leap forward to most of the examples I'm going to show you today are from what archaeologists call the classic period for the Maya. And these are a lot of Maya examples, and so this is the people in Guatemala, southern Mexico. The great city of Tikal is a Maya city. You know, some of these vessels came from there. And the great thing about the Maya, which I've mentioned before, is that they wrote. And they wrote on lots of things, and they wrote about different sorts of things. And these different vessels are specially made for a ruler or some sort of noble. And so it often will have the noble's name on it. And there's a very sort of set text that's part of this that identifies what's in it. It took a while for people who are specialists in Maya language and writing to be able to decipher it, but they knew even before they could read this that it was saying pretty much a very standard sort of thing from one vessel to the next. And so it became known as the primary standard sequence. It's just like, God, they're saying that same thing again. And the first interpretation was, well, it must be something about rituals, right? It must be ceremonial. It's recounting the origin of the world or something. But now that we can read it, we know that it's saying what the contents are. And quite often it refers, and here's your lesson in reading Maya today. This little glyph right here is and here's the word. It's read as cacao. Cacao. This is cacao. And then what it is, it looks like a little, it looks like a face. Can you see it, like the eyes and the lips there? It's a catfish. And this has an affix on it that's wa, which helps you know that it's cacao. It should be read that way. Sometimes there'll be little dots next to it, 2 dots, and that's repeating what that sound is, cacao. Now this particular one, and it would take me a long class if I read all the, told you what each glyph was in each text I'm going to show you, but I'll point out the main things. This one is Si li kawa. Siil means in Maya languages today, and in this case, fresh. What do you think fresh might be? What's your best guess about that? Yeah.
That's fruit, maybe?
Yeah.
Fermented or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a reason they use the catfish to like sift the cacao?
Well, partly it's what that word is in Maya, so it's evoking the sound with it. But it also, I think it's like multiple reasons why they have it, and there's also some things about hero stories and that sort of thing that relate to it as well. But the associations of that with it. Yeah, because you'd think, why a fish with a, cacao? Okay, fresh. Let's get back to fresh. Another interpretation, the sense of fresh is sort of pure, and this is Alexander Tocqueville suggested this, that it may mean like pure, uncut, the stuff, nothing added to it. So it could be fresh in that sense. Because there's another description of cacao that is almost certainly talking about the fruit. But this, I want you to keep in mind too, because we think about chocolate and what percent cacao it is, and when you get up to 100%, it's called cacao liquor. Very different thing from a Hershey's bar. So, and we'll have cacao liquor tastings pretty soon. But yeah, keep in mind that idea of fresh is unadulterated as well. This is the one that the specialists of Maya writing have suggested could be like the fruit. So, and it's often used to describe fruit or foods as fresh or not, raw, not cooked, that sort of thing, not processed. And there are lots of examples of ach cacao in these Maya texts. So, if they're talking about fresh cacao fruit, should we be calling this chocolate? No, totally different animal. And it gives us a clue about the incredible variety of these different cacao preparations. Oops, come here, thing. I'm bringing up my notes for some of this. Now, there's also this text right over here. Kind of hard to see the way this is projecting, but I've got the glyph block noted here. This is the reading Kanakawa. Anybody spot the catfish? Where's the cacao? Can you see it?
I think I see it.
Yeah, come here. Point it out. Go for it. That's actually, it seems like this blue box. See, look in here.
Oh,
What do you think it is?
probably this one.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a fierce looking fish, catfish there. Oh my gosh. Looks like it'd bite your head off. Kana kakawa. Kan cacao is how you read that. So in that sense, kan means ripe. Like, this is important because I'm going to get into stuff in a minute here of things that are green rather than ripe. So, and again, this is just to impress upon you the many, many ways that this is being used. And so, the full phrase here, this is kan cacao. So, ta yu tal, Untitled Cacao or excuse me, Untitled Cacao. His drinking vessel for Utah type cacao. And then there's been a lot of debate about this, but what does it mean? Probably that Utah is referring to fruitiness. So this is like the luscious, fresh, fruity kind of cacao. Now, this is one thing I keep saying over and over again. People they have a hard time accepting it sometimes because we have this great narrative about chocolate that goes from liquid, beverage, oh yeah, the ancient people, they only drank it, to candy bar. So liquid to solid. And then what is that ancient beverage like? Yucky, bitter, sort of weird. To, what is it today? Oh, sweet. Yeah, sweet. But that's not right. Because there are lots of examples of references this long ago, hundreds and hundreds of years before any European ever set foot on the Americas, that they were enjoying sweetness with cacao. And so, okay, which one of these is the cacao glyph? On the right, yes. Yeah. And this one has the little repeating dots, so you know it's cacao. And then this is the glyph for sweet. Not only is it just sweet, but in some cases they specify different kinds of sweet. So, cob is referring to honey, cacao. What is hope? Five different kinds of honey. Huh? What? Yeah, there's, and it's different. Have you had different kinds of honey, like clover honey versus?
Just one time.
You think it all tastes the same?
Probably not.
This could be advertising. Yeah, this could be like, yeah, right. I've got these 5 honeys. I'm so important. It's, there's actually a little bit, I'm joking, but in some ways it's a little bit serious because you have a proliferation of a lot of these different kinds of recipes popping up on different vessels in different regions of the Maya area at this time. And then something breaks it down and you just don't see these texts anymore. And I think part of it is actually the network of getting the cacao and getting these different, either they're additives or kinds of cacao. So that's the question I have in my mind now because working with contemporary fine chocolate producers, you can get some of these flavors just from the cacao itself. It's not they're adding a cherry flavor. It's like, oh my God, this tastes like cherry. Or sometimes, wow, it tastes like Fruit Loops. How'd you do that? Right. But in this one, they're talking about five different kinds of honey. Here's another way of saying honey cacao, chabil, and again, this is in this text. I won't make you find it's too little. See where the cacao is hiding. Now, let me work on this one. I imported it from a different design format. Okay, where's the cacao glove? Yeah, goes now. Look at that. I can spot the cacao.
Yeah, I'm all figured out now.
I'm gonna add a question to the quiz now. Tell me which one is the right. That would be so awesome. I'll probably incorporate it later on.
Looks like it's like getting ready to fight.
Yeah.
That's just like hand up, like, democratic.
Well, and this is the wa, the ka. So when it says kawa, this is the wa hanging off. It's the affix saying wa. And this is the, yeah, but it's like, you know. And then this is Yuchibi suits. This is a logograph, so it's one hieroglyph. This is syllabic writing here. Suits, what on earth is suits? Well, some people, huh? It looks like what?
A bee.
A bee like a buzzing bee? It's a good, interesting. I'll show you some, what people have thought it might be, but it's kind of on the right track for sure. And it appears in this vase. It appears on several different vases, and pretty much in a fairly well-defined region in the Maya area. So, like, one thing that's really cool about these is that you can almost like have do a political map just based on the cacao recipes. You know, some only occur in some areas, others other places, and they're associated with certain rulers. The suits, this Alexander Tocqueville also suggested that it's actually cherry, that this is like a berry kind of fruit. And it's part of the support for that word suits is used in some Mayan languages today to refer to a cherry or kind of a tart fruit like that. Here's another example. Oh, this is a beautiful one, isn't it? You know, and this little dealie here, that's like a jade ear flare. This is a super fancy cacao. And then this is, recognize the suits glyph from before. It's a very distinctive looking glyph. So another example, and this is from Tikal, and I'm not sure if they've tested the residues in that one, but I think it's another one of those. And then this lidded vessel, that's another thing too. This is it's proclaiming a cacao pot that, you know, that it's supposed to be about cacao, and with this lid on it. Okay, and so here's the suits again, and these are the possibilities in the Maya world, in the Maya environment. And again, you're thinking about how the different trees, the cacao tree itself, and then you add to that the flavors that you get just from something being grown in a particular place by a particular group of people. I would add that as another layer on top. Because have you, trying to think of a good parallel example, like different kinds of cheeses. You know, it's cow milk, right? But happy cows from California, grass-fed, and then the cheese is made by this particular group, this dairy. It's supposed to have a different flavor, right? And then the honeys from different places. The simple example, I guess, is wine, because it's a few varieties of grapes, but if you grow that Pinot Noir grape in one part of California versus Spain versus Hungary versus wherever, it's all quite different, the taste. And so some of that is going on, absolutely, with cacao. And as we do more tastings through the semester, you'll be able to pick out different sorts of flavors that really come out, and it's not because people are adding stuff to it, yeah.
So with this soups example, is it like there was just one group of people that were using it because they had a certain kind of berry, or was it like being used a bunch of places, so it probably meant it was different berries? Does that question even make sense?
Different
like,
berries.
Does it like, did the word come before the berry, did the berry come before the word, that kind of thing? Like, could it just be applied to different types of flavors, or does it mean one specific plant and we're just not sure what that is?
It may mean a specific or a general kind of, like we call cherries. There are lots of different varieties of cherries, but we generally, think of a particular sort of fruit. That's quite different from an orange or something.
Okay.
So I think that there's that sense of cherry, and I think there's also the linking of, well, cherry means this sort of range in taste.
Okay.
We don't expect it to taste like an orange or a citrus fruit or a lemon or whatever. Now, the other question, but the question in my mind is, so they can be adding cherry to the preparation to make cherry cacao, right? So an ingredient. Or it could be that, wow, this kind of cacao really tastes like, has a cherry taste to it. And that's what I want. That's what these vessels are like. This is what's supposed to be in here for me. This is my deal. So I want the sweet stuff. I want the pure stuff. I want the honey. Or it can be preparations. And it could be both, like they're playing with it. Maybe it's not quite the taste I want, so, to consume it, to prepare it, I'm going to add. But these, the Maya, contemporary Maya tends to refer to this North American black cherry, but other possibilities that are more common, like in the Maya forest, these hog plums. These are, and again, the main thing is different taste and also sweetness is in there. Okay, now there's a tendency to think that all of these are beverages. Probably not. We've got to open our minds that this is, there are mixes. Now these are definitely mixed preparations that some of these refer to. And it's a mix of corn in different states with cacao. And so in some cases, you'll have all cacao, which is a lot of cacao with a little bit of corn thrown in. And what's corn going to do to the taste, do you think? Is it going to affect it?
More savory, sweet.
Yeah, it could be a little, because we use corn sweeteners, it could.
Maybe
Yeah, exactly. Thicker preparation, which could have advantages in some way. Yeah.
Maybe they usually have like to make it into like a paste.
Well, yeah, and this definitely, this chocolatey, the cacao preparation is like thick. It's like, have any of y'all had grits? It's kind of like that with some chocolate thrown in. Think of that. And so think about that too. Yeah, I know. And think about also with the corn in there, it's going to be, maybe savory. Definitely savory is a possibility, but also just starchy. It's that cereal grain base to it. And so maybe a little bit trending more towards starchy, nutty, substantial too in that way. Corn's a subsistence item. So some of these definitely are thicker preparations. So a lot of these vessels, these are rollouts. So they're cylindrical vessels like this. And so you're not necessarily going to take grits and do this with it, and then not all the preparations are hot either, because we think of hot chocolate, hot drink. Well, this sakha is a preparation ethnographically today among the Maya. It's a cold. It's a beverage, but it's got corn in it, and it has some amount of cacao in it, and we can read that same glyph here, sakha, cacao. Isn't that cool? Now, so lots of different preparations, lots of texts that tell us about possible ingredients or at least flavors that they're playing with. Well, how to, we can get into other kind of indirect evidence of cacao and, generally in food preparation. That cooking technology chapter for today was about the Maya kitchen, right? And did a great job of putting together, referring to archaeological examples of these tools. We're adding cacao seeds, maybe even processing the pulp to a certain degree. You got to grind it up somehow, and they did not have Cuisinarts, right? I didn't have a Cuisinart for a long time. But this is some vocabulary I want you to learn, because we're doing a lot with Latin American cooking, and so this is kind of basic tools in use today, and have been in use for millennia. The mano. Anybody speak Spanish or know something? Yeah. And why is it hand? Because you hold it in your hand. And then metate. And this is coming from Nahuatl, but it's the base that you grind on. And so you use it this way. And the chapter goes into details about how they use it, what the mano and the metate are like, and the grinding. And if you're grinding stuff on here, there's a potential, at least, for some residues to be preserved. And you find those archaeologically a lot. So there's one issue where the plant materials, plant remains, are fairly perishable compared to this, which is, lasts forever. And I have an example for those of you who haven't seen it. I got this in, it's a tourist it's a little teeny tiny version, more like a mortar and pestle. But the feel of the stone, this is the right kind of stone to make a mano and a metate with. So I'll start with this over here. And you can have grinding stones of different sizes for different sorts of tasks too. And the big ones are for corn. Smaller ones might be for pigments or for some of these seasonings that I'll talk about. Also, when you're thinking about grinding and maybe some of those preparations that are in these ancient Maya texts and ethnographically observed also, it involves toasting the seeds, right? You roast them a little bit. Well, how are you going to do that? You can think about the chapter has a good discussion of the different cooking methods that are in a Maya household. One of them is this koben, the 3-stone hearth. You can't see the stones here, but they really actually do tend to have 3 stones at the base of, at the core of it. Why would you have stones? Why does it matter to have stones in a hearth? It's a technological reason you might want that. Yeah. And so sometimes archaeological evidence from around in this area, what's called the woodland period, about 1,000 or so years ago, you see all this fire-cracked stone because they have the stones in there, and they weren't exactly, after a while, eventually they'll break. But it also kind of heat treats them. You can tell that they've been altered by being in a fire for a long time versus once it happened. And then the key thing, we were thinking about, why a catfish for cacao? Why is it that symbol? Well, 3 stones for the Maya is the core of the universe. Like that's what the universe is. It rests on that. And so everyday cooking, they're also, observing these ways that the world is made. And then the stones also in cooking. Like you don't necessarily have a metal grate. If you didn't have one, you can use those stones to support these griddles that are called comals. Has anyone seen a comal? They're big. I don't have one here. They're big. I mean, some of them can be huge, but they're ceramic. I have archaeological. I'll wear shirts because I have sherds of them from archaeological sites. But they're big and they're about that thick, and it's basically like a big frying pan. And in fact, at a certain point, people put this talc substance on the top, and it's like the first nonstick pan ever. Maya in Highland, Guatemala did that. And so great for frying, tortillas, toasting things, and then you can set other things on it. I mean, it's really an all-purpose kind of thing. It would be kind of unthinkable in certain households to not have a comal to cook on, because it's like not having a frying pan. And then the other kind of cooking that especially Yucatec Maya do is this sort of underground oven kind of thing, which is also described as part of the cooking technology in that chapter. And I just wanted to have a couple pictures of this pib. So you think about the variety of preparations, but then also what goes into preparing it. And in each of these will have its own evidence, archaeological evidence that will survive in different ways. But basically, there'd be some sort of vessel here, not necessarily, these days a metal cooking pot. And then you put the firewood on it, and you cook it that way, burn this off, and then it cooks slowly for a long time. Cook tamales that way. Okay, what are some other cacao-related tools?
Question. I was wondering if they go and cook it underground, did it cover it?
Yeah.
When they put the
Yeah, so where that one was open looking, that's after, like it's cooked, it had a covering over it. And that's part of what this is. And then there's, I think, whether they put lids, sometimes
that's what I
ceramic
meant.
lids that won't burn. It depends on what they're cooking too, because a lot of things will be like a corn dough that's wrapped in banana leaves, and that they don't necessarily put. They might put a comal or some other vessel on top of it to keep the leaves from burning, and it kind of steams that way. Depends on what you're cooking, but yeah, that they keep the charcoal from falling in if they do something. Okay, cooking technology, serving and preparing technology, because if you have the cacao toasted, ground up, ready to go, and you're going to make some sort of beverage out of it, a lot of the evidence that we have, both from early colonial writings and a little bit archaeologically, is that it was whipped, frothed, the drink sometimes. And so you can froth it this way. Remember those steep spouts and how ancient those are? Well, they're doing this sort of thing. They're pouring it out and into something. And that is explained in documents like this to help create. Think of lattes and how we really like the steam, the frothy top on a latte. Think about, I keep thinking about this with hot chocolate today. And you order a hot chocolate at Starbucks. And what do they ask you?
want whipped cream?
You want whipped cream on that, right. It's like we lost the cacao froth, but instead we're adding the cream to, recreate that experience. It seems okay to have that. Doesn't seem weird, does it? Well, another way to do it, remember how I said, oh, look, there's a hole on top, opening to do something. You can froth it with a beater, and it's called in Spanish a molinillo, but there are lots and lots of examples. And in fact, this is one thing that Europeans really copied. They liked the whole frothy. I mean, love of lattes went way back. And they thought, and we could probably credit Mesoamericans with, with the whole idea in some ways. But to have this mill, this molinillo that you whip it up with. So it's a big part of it. And some of them very elaborately carved, and you roll them between your hands like this, and it makes this frothy foam. Now, I'm throwing another example of a cacao vessel, because I've shown you all these sort of beverage drinking things, more or less, maybe, or at least cacao storage. This is also a kind of cacao vessel, because it's got the monkey hanging out with his pods, or his pods, her pods. But would you drink something out of that?
No. It looked like a bowl.
Yeah. And so here's where that paste, those gruels, the eating of the fruit, all of that, there are more solid preparations that are part of this whole world of cacao, ancient world of cacao, for sure. And in fact, at the Peabody Museum at Harvard, there's a plate with inscriptions, and it's a plate like this, and it's talking about this is for cacao. And in fact, it's lima bean cacao. Yeah. But again, can't think about a candy bar, yeah.
Did all their vessels and plates and ceramics depict what food it was for, or was it did they just have a thing for cacao?
Well, I'm giving you a really narrow view. So there are other sorts of vessels that a lot of the vessels depict. They're actually more like party scenes, or offerings to lords, different sorts of gods and deities.
So they have dishes for other foods too?
Yeah, definitely. But they don't, and there's a fair variety of foods and drinks referred to, but cacao kind of takes a lion's share of the different, it's mentioned the most. Yeah, because there are definitely lots of other corn-related references. So, and like the lima bean example, that occurs every now and then, not terribly often. And okay. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to emphasize too is that it's not just for eating. It wasn't just for eating. It wasn't just for drinking, because it also had a lot of relationships symbolically to fertility, to certain days of the week, certain kinds of ceremonies, especially for healing, particular sicknesses. Cacao was the way to do it. And this one is really showing the relationship to power and lordship and that sort of thing. Because this is a lord as a cacao tree. He's got the pods hanging off of him, right? Very powerful. And there are other depictions from Chichen Itza of a lord with his staff is a cacao tree. So there's a lot of linking of power with it, as well as, let me get, this is an almanac, a Maya almanac. This is pre-Columbian. This is one of the few books that has survived. And again, these have been deciphered by work of lots and lots of different people. But this is, it's showing a couple of deities and their associations with cacao, but it's really, think of it like a farmer's almanac, This is when you're going to want to plant corn. This is a good day to travel. It's a handy reference guide for common people. So all of this other stuff I've shown you, Lord this, noble that, really special, And it would make you think they're the only ones who are doing anything. And we know, on the other hand, all of this ethnographic evidence of all kinds of foods, all sorts of things going on with cacao in people's daily lives. And then this is more evidence of that, well, this is the one that's, they're basically, this is the day you should offer cacao to have a better year. But this is the day to offer cacao for good travel, that sort of thing. It's associated that way. So a lot of people travel. It's not just lords. Okay, so some examples of that. And then I'm doing Maya, and this is another example from central Mexico, early colonial text. And these pictures here are of women in the marketplace and selling a cacao beverage. And it's very beautiful poetics describing, she's called Quetzal. And ATL means, it has two meanings, water or cacao. So it's sort of this liquidy sort of sense to things, but it's not, any liquid, it's just either one of those two things. And then, have you all heard of a Quetzal bird? So it's that same, it's the bird, the tropical birds that have these super long green tails, beautiful shimmering things. I mean, highly prized in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica to have on headdresses and to do feather work and all those sorts of things. But it also has a sense in the language of the most beautiful thing you can imagine. So, what is she called? Quetzal. She's like making the best thing divine. It's divine. And the text goes through, she selects the cacao seeds. She grinds the cacao seeds. So here, using the mono and the taco. I can't remember if this particular text talks about roasting them. Then she selects the water and she adds the water. She froths it. She takes the froth off. She adds some more water. I mean, it goes through. It's really a recipe of every single action that this fine cacao maker, fine cacao beverage maker takes. Okay, we're at the end of our time. Almost got to chocolate. So that'll be for next class.
Oh, is it? Yeah.